Hello, welcome back to the breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you are watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with another update coming out for the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I've got a very big lineup of news to brief you all on today. So today's date is June 12th, 2025, and it's Thursday. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Lots of news to get into in today's update. And I can't believe tomorrow's going to be Friday already. These weeks are just flying by. There's been so much big news coming out from this war. Now we have crazy escalation happening in the Middle East. I'll give you guys some updates on the Middle East later today. So we're going to jump into a major story out of the Moscow region, actually not too far away from the capital of Moscow. Ukraine struck another defense plant. Take a look at your screen. Ukrainian drones struck a microelectronics plant in Moscow Oblast. Ukrainian forces have struck the Resonant plant in the Moscow region on June 12th, a facility for the serial production and assembly of printed circuit boards and electronics, according to Ukraine's general staff. There's a video actually coming out from Ukraine's Defense Ministry showing where this location of this building was at. That was directly hit by at least one Ukrainian drone. There's a video there kind of showing the destruction of that plant as it was hit by a drone. So I'll pull up that video for you guys in just a little bit, full screen, so you can see the direct hit on that plant. And yeah, so apparently they're producing circuit boards, electronics that are used for navigation systems, for Russia's military, also for like drones, missiles. These are circuit boards that go inside of those also. And we also have very big news today as well that the Russian casualties have exceeded over 1 million losses today. So that's a huge milestone considering that Russia's 3-day special military operation is not going so good, right? Clearly, they were expecting to take Ukraine and Kiev within 3 days. And then, what, almost 4 years later now, Russia's still heavily fighting inside of Ukraine and taking over 1 million casualties. So that's a big update today. And then we have some information that a prisoner exchange has taken place today also, and Ukraine has received some prisoners of war back from Russia, so we'll go over that also today. So let's go ahead and jump into the news, guys. We're going to hop on over here to X with Max25. The hit plant Resonant in the Zubovo Techno Park, located 40 kilometers from the center of Moscow. The Techno Park is home to enterprises involved in the development and modernization of electronics, microcircuits, navigation systems, and elements for missile and naval weapons. Resonant specializes in the manufacture of multi-layer printed circuit boards, flexible rigged boards, and high-precision microelectronics. The boards manufactured at Resonant are integrated into flight control, navigation, guidance, and data transmission systems, in particular into Iskander, Caliber, X-101 missiles, Orlan 10, Lancet, Cube drones, as well as into guidance units of artillery systems. Okay, so there's a report from Ukraine's general staff today reporting this direct strike on this facility. This is taken directly from the video, this kind of screenshot here showing the drone directly striking this plant. So now moving on to NOAA reports, Microelectronics assembly facility Resonant was reportedly targeted in Russia's Moscow region at night. The extent of the damage is being clarified. Yeah, so we don't know exactly what happened to this plant, how much damage was done to one of these buildings over here, but we can see in this video there definitely was a direct strike in that area, and this possibly indicating that we had this plant directly being hit. So we're waiting for official confirmation of the extent of the damage, satellite imagery and whatnot, but I'm sure there's going to be a huge hole in the roof of one of these buildings over here, and there's like several buildings that are attached to this complex, and I had it for you guys on the thumbnail for you before you came in here. Got some other pictures I can show you also. Here's some OSINT into it. Last night, Ukraine conducted a successful long-range UAV strike on the Resonant technology complex in Zubovo, Moscow Oblast, which is 50 miles or 80 kilometers northwest of the capital. That houses a production facility for printed circuit boards and electronic components. So here's kind of a satellite image of this facility. You can see here it's got numerous buildings. Probably this main building that got hit is what I'm thinking. And again, this is where they're producing microelectronics here at this facility. Here's a little map indicating how far away it was from the city center of Moscow. Here's the capital of Russia. Wasn't too far away, okay? Just over here next to this town of Shevlyakovo, if I'm saying that right. Okay, so not too far away, guys. Just about 50 miles or so from Moscow, or 80 kilometers. Now, from Defense of Ukraine, Ukrainian warriors eliminated 1 million of Russian occupiers since February 24th, 2022. Russia's three-day special military operation is going according to plan, is what Defense of Ukraine put today. Here's a little picture that they put up as well, showing the losses on the Russian side. So yeah, it's blown clear across 1 million today. I'll show you guys with our update at the end of this video how many losses exactly are being recorded according to Ukrainian intelligence. So it's gone well over 1 million losses already on the Russia side. And that's crazy to think that, you know, Russia's lost 1 million troops, you know, whether it's being killed in action or, you know, injured in the war or whatnot. 1 million losses is quite a bit for this war in Ukraine, especially considering how much land they've actually taken in Ukraine. It's not nearly as significant as you would think, considering that Russia has lost so many troops. So insane how many troops they've lost here. Now from Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, today in year 4 of Russia's full-scale war, our military has recorded over 1 million Russian casualties, killed and wounded. That's the price Putin is willing to pay for his sick geopolitical fantasies, and still he refuses to end this war. Yeah, he's got a point here with this statement, right? You know, Russia does not want to end this war, even though they've lost over 1 million troops fighting against Ukraine. Yet they still want to continue on this invasion. And we were hearing yesterday from Volodymyr Zelensky at a conference down in Odessa, southwestern Ukraine, that the Russians are trying to take over the city of Odessa, like the Odessa region, Microelectronics region. We've been hearing about that for the last week or two from Ukrainian officials, that the Russians are planning to expand their offensive in the south. Now, will Russia actually do it? We'll have to wait and see what happens, but Ukrainian officials have been warning about that. Now from Volodymyr Zelensky, our people are coming home. Today, warriors of our armed forces, National Guard, and Border Guard service are back home. They all require medical treatment. They will certainly receive the care they need. This is already the second stage of bringing back severely wounded and seriously ill warriors. We continue working to bring everyone home from Russian captivity. We thank everyone who helps make these exchanges possible so that each and every one of them can be home in Ukraine. Okay, so something I want to note here is there was actually an exchange yesterday, I believe, also, and we don't know how many Ukrainian soldiers have been returned home. It could be just a few dozen, it could be in the hundreds, I really don't know. And over these last few exchanges, probably the last 3 actually, Ukraine has not been reporting how many are being returned back home, and I'm kind of curious why that is. Maybe they're still working out the details, and they don't want to release these numbers yet, as maybe they might change or something like that. But I did want to note that that we haven't really seen how many actual troops have been returned recently, because usually we'll get numbers. We'll hear, 200, 250, or, 500, whatever, 1,000. This time around, we're not hearing that. So if I get those numbers later, I'll give you guys another update. So now from Volodymyr Zelensky again, he puts home and puts the Ukrainian flag 3 times. So we got a video here of Ukrainian POWs, prisoners of war that have returned back home. And it's about 1 minute and 40 seconds, and I do apologize, there is no English subtitles here, and they're all speaking Ukrainian, obviously, but I think it's an amazing video to watch, so let's go ahead and take a look at this real quick.
Да, столько было представлений о нем, и это все так совпало, так все, я просто хочу поблагодарить Украину большое за то, что она меня вытащила с полона. Дякую їй велике. Да, точно.
На границі, я в Україні, мама, мене обміняли, скоро буду вдома.
Тоже дуже сильно люблю. Успокойтесь, все хорошо, живий.
Мурашки по коже, он сейчас с тобой разговариваю, короче. Чтобы Украину жопу запускать.
Я в такой жопі був, ти просто не представляєш. Дякую вам велике.
Все, мамулька, я вечером наберу. Давай, солнышко, все, не плачь.
Я вже вдома, вже в Україні. Не хвилюйся, все буде файно.
Ой, як назвали?
Ой, Артурчик. Ой. Добренько, Соня.
Так, я вже в Україні. Все буде добре. Україна, ми з тобою.
All right, so amazing to see these Ukrainian defenders returning back home from Russian captivity. You can see a lot of them were calling their family members. They were probably worried sick about them, considering that some of these soldiers I've been hearing have been in Russian captivity since the beginning of the war. So can you imagine being held captive in a Russian prison for nearly 3 years or longer? And some of them just barely getting back home today. You can see a lot of them very skinny as well. They're going to need medical treatment. Yeah, just amazing to see them coming back home and they're safe and they'll be able to be returned back to their families and loved ones. So amazing to see that. Now from Ukrainian Review, Russia's massive attack on Kharkiv, 15 injured, including 4 children. A 2-year-old boy was hospitalized. Residential buildings, schools, kindergarten, shops, and cars were damaged. Yeah, we had another pretty massive attack on Kharkiv again last night. I did see some reports also that there were people trapped under rubble again in certain homes that had collapsed. I think we did have some people potentially losing their lives as bodies were being retrieved under rubble. We can see lots of damage here to a high-rise building. Cars that caught on fire as well due to Russian drones entering into this area. This is up in northeastern Ukraine. So Kharkiv being heavily attacked once again. We've been seeing a lot of drones entering into Kharkiv recently. Now for Max 25, Keith Kellogg outlined a plan for a ceasefire in Ukraine, which envisages the consolidation of the current positions of the parties de facto without legal recognition. Want to achieve a ceasefire on current positions, whoever stands where, that territory is behind them. This is not legal recognition, but de facto. Then the return of children, prisoners, and sustainable truce, beneficial not only to Ukraine, but also to Europe. Also the return of Russia to the civilized community so that everyone can live with the results in the long term. We do not want a new war in 3 to 5 years, said the special envoy of the U.S. president. So it looks like they want to freeze the front line again, and they want to push for de facto control. Okay, so no legal recognition. So I would assume that would mean, like, even the territories that Russia's controlling right now, including Crimea, would not be considered Russian territory, at least for right now. But I'm sure they're also talking about the front line inside of Ukraine, like, Donetsk region, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Luhansk, all those areas as well would just be a de facto recognition. And I think Keith Kellogg was also in a interview today, and he was stating that he believes that, there's still a positive side to this when it comes to ending this war. He believes that they have a real chance at ending it. You guys can let me know what you think, but I have to disagree with that. I don't think they're going to be able to end this war right now. Now from NOLA Reports, a joke, right? While Russia bombs Ukrainian cities, U.S. Secretary of State Rubio congratulates Russians on Russia Day and says that U.S. remains committed to a bright future for the Russian people and seeks mutually beneficial relations with the Kremlin. Yeah, here's a statement from the U.S. Department of State. It says Russian National Day. It's a press statement from Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State. You can see the date here, June 12th, 2025. On behalf of the American people, I want to congratulate the Russian people on Russia Day. The United States remains committed to supporting the Russian people as they continue to build on their aspirations for a brighter future. We also take this opportunity to reaffirm the United States' desire for constructive engagement with the Russian Federation to bring about a durable peace between Russia and Ukraine. It is our hope that peace will foster more mutually beneficial relations between our countries. Okay, so U.S. Secretary of State coming out and congratulating Russia for their day today. Okay, so Russia National Day. So crazy, right, that the U.S. administration is coming out and congratulating Russia on Russia Day while they continue to bomb Ukrainian civilians in this fight. So crazy. Now from Max 25, GUR congratulated Russia on its day by paralyzing the work of one of the largest internet providers in Siberia, Orion Telecom. A closed city specializing in uranium mining was left without communication. Orion Telecom was the only provider there. Yeah, so while the U.S. is congratulating Russia on their day, Ukraine is actually launching a cyber attack, taking down a major internet provider in Siberia. Here's the report right here from TVK Krasnoyarsk. It says Russian Railways reports DDoS attack following Orion Telecom. The website and mobile app were attacked, and there may be interruptions throughout the day. Our specialists are trying to normalize the operation of the site and application. Ticket offices at stations and train stations are operating normally. Tickets are being sold as usual, Russian Railways reported. Looks like some railways are being affected by this as well. You can see the complete collapse of internet here in this area, as this chart was showing, normal activity, then all of a sudden it just fell off out of nowhere. This was due to a DDoS attack coming from Ukraine's GUR. Now, for more translated, Ukrainian media report that German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius has arrived in Kiev. And yes, he has today. I've got some statements I can show you guys. There he is right there getting off this train that was bringing him into Kiev today. Now, for Max 25, Germany intends to soon allocate another 1.9 billion euros to Ukraine, in addition to 7 billion euros allocated in previous months. According to Pistorius, Zelensky said that Germany's plan to deliver IRIS-T systems to Ukraine is calculated for the next 3 years, and Kiev is grateful for this. Okay, so it looks like they're going to be getting some more IRIS-T air defense systems from Germany. And Germany's going to be allocating another 1.9 billion euros to Ukraine, okay, in addition to 7 billion euros that were already allocated to Ukraine in previous months. So more support coming from Germany today as Boris Pistorius arrived in Kiev to meet with Volodymyr Zelensky. So there's a report there. Now from Anton Gerashenko, no Taurus missiles for Ukraine. And the question was, given the intensification of shelling of all Ukrainian cities and Kiev in particular over the past week, are you considering supplying Taurus missiles to us? German Defense Minister Pistorius responded, in response to your question about whether we are considering it, my answer is no. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to upset a lot of people, but it looks like we have confirmation coming out from Germany today that they're not going to be sending Taurus missiles to Ukraine. Or are they just not committing to sending any new ones to Ukraine, and maybe Ukraine has already got some? You guys can let me know what you think, as we know that Germany has classified all their transfers of weapons to Ukraine. Okay, so they could be sending them, even though they're saying no here, they could be sending them behind closed doors. You guys can let me know what you think, but this is what he said today.
Пане міністре, до вас перше питання. Ми дуже вдячні за підтримку Німеччини, яка наразі є, але не можемо не спитати, зважаючи на те, як за останній тиждень тільки посилилися обстріли усіх українських міст і Києва, зокрема, чи розглядаєте ви поставки таурусів нам?
Da Sie mir eine Frage gestellt haben, ob wir das in Erwägung ziehen, lautet meine Antwort nein.
Пане міністре, до вас перше.
Okay, so something that I noticed here, guys, let's go ahead and move it towards the end when he responds. He's kind of got a little bit of a smirk on his face. He's kind of smiling a little bit. Is it just me? It kind of seems like maybe he's sending a message here that even though he's saying no, maybe Ukraine already received them. I mean, we don't really know. I'm not saying that Ukraine did. Maybe Ukraine doesn't have Taurus missiles, but I thought it was interesting that towards the end there was kind of like a pause, and he's kind of smirking and smiling there a little bit. And I wonder if Ukraine really does have Taurus missiles and we just don't know about it yet. We're going to have to wait and see. There could be a surprise, but according to him, they are not planning to transfer any Taurus missiles to Ukraine. Now from Savchenko, Volodymyr Zelensky expects to discuss anti-Russian sanctions with Trump at G7 summit. I very much hope that if the relevant decisions are not made before then, I will be able to at least have an understanding of how close we are to this decision, he said. Okay, so looks like Ukraine's still trying to push for sanctions onto Russia. It looks like Zelensky is going to be meeting with Trump potentially at the G7 summit coming up later this month at The Hague. And they're going to be discussing sanctions on Russia, as we know that, the Ukraine still wants the U.S. to be slamming Russia with sanctions right now. EU sanctions are helping, but U.S. sanctions would do a lot more damage onto Russia. But right now we know the U.S. is really holding back on wanting to sanction Russia. So we'll see how that goes. Now for Max 25, in Sumy region, Russians have started using passive drones. They hang near roads and instantly attack as soon as they notice people or cars. So take a look at one of these drones that have been spotted in the Sumy region. And apparently the Russians are using these. They're calling them passive drones. They kind of just hang out in an area, and then right when it spots somebody coming, maybe a vehicle or who knows, maybe even civilian vehicles or people, it goes and attacks right away. So I wonder if these are like AI driven or what happens here. But there's some drones just kind of hanging out in the Sumy region. We've been hearing about this, that FPV drones are now going to be attacking the city of Sumy as the Russians are closing in on that city. Now for Max 25, Czech President Petr Pavel called on the U.S. to give Europe more time and unrealistic goals, to take care of the continent's security and contain an increasingly aggressive Russia, according to Bloomberg. Pavel said he was disappointed by the reluctance of Trump to show more strength and to clearly designate Russia as the aggressor and Ukraine as the victim. The Czech president added that Europe needed the U.S. to step up pressure on the Kremlin through economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and military deterrence. Here's a report today from Bloomberg. Czech leader calls on Trump to give Europe more time to rearm. Yeah, so apparently the Czech president here calling on, Trump, do more action, sanction Russia, stop being so weak on Russia. We know that a lot of Europeans feel like that the U.S. is just being so weak on Russia, as Russia is the aggressor, Ukraine is the victim here. So it looks like he's calling on Trump to do something right now. We'll see if Trump does, but so far he hasn't. Now from the Ukrainian Review, Scott Bessent, no country that has contributed to the Russian war machine with money, troops, or military force will have the right to participate in the reconstruction of Ukraine. We are working to quickly put our partnership with Ukraine into action. We had members of the Ukrainian economic team in our offices at the Treasury last week. There is a major conference in Rome on Ukraine reconstruction, and we are calling on the World Bank and Congress to focus on that, Bessent said. So this is Scott Bessent, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, and he's stating here that no country that has contributed to Russia's war machine will have the right to participate in reconstruction in Ukraine. They're talking a lot about that right now. There was a conference yesterday in Odessa that I talked about, and a Serbian president, Aleksandar Vučić, was vowing to help restore at least one, maybe two cities in Ukraine to show support for Ukraine. So much talk about that right now. Obviously Ukraine's going to need a lot of reconstruction when this war does come to an end, but it doesn't look highly likely it's going to end anytime soon. But looks like, top leaders and officials out of the U.S. still talking about this right now when it comes to reconstruction of Ukraine. Now for more translated, under the guise of drills in Belarus, the Russians could launch an offensive on the northern border regions. This threat should also be taken into account, although they have not yet made a decision on whether to attempt it, says Maxim Zorin, deputy commander of the 3rd Separate Assault Brigade. So we got a commander out of Ukraine's military warning that the Russians might launch an attack from Belarus, maybe go after some of the Baltic nations or NATO in general. We've been hearing a lot about this, and we got more reports even coming out from Ukraine's military commanders stating that the Russians might carry out some sort of provocation against NATO here soon, as in Belarus, the Russians are going to be holding massive military exercises with the Belarusian army very soon in the next month or two, I think. Now for Military News UA, Russian soldiers hiding in a pipe in the lens of a Ukrainian FPV drone. So I wanted to pull this up because, if you guys remember back during the Kursk operation, when Ukraine was operating in the Kursk Oblast, one of the big things that happened just prior to Ukraine having to, really start to pull out from Kursk was the Russians were using a pipe, no longer being used gas pipe or something like that, similar to what we'd be looking at here. And I thought it was crazy. The Russians really like hiding in these gas pipes. So this was a snapshot taken from an FPV drone that Ukraine was using just prior to it probably exploding inside this tank. And we had at least 2 Russian soldiers hiding inside of it. So crazy snapshot there. Now for Max 25, the scale of Russia's blocking of GPS signals in the Baltics is expanding, according to Lithuanian Deputy Defense Minister Karolis Aleksa. Now, this is not a good sign. If Russia is starting to increase blocking of GPS signals in the Baltics, is that possibly preparation for what's going on in Belarus? Now, Belarus just right next door kind of to Kaliningrad, not too far away. And it makes you wonder if there's some sort of connection there, as we know the Russians are going to be ramping up their military training and doing some drills inside of Belarus here very soon this summer. And again, we had that report from that commander stating that the Russians might launch an attack onto NATO. There's been so much talk about that. Me personally, I don't think that'll be the case, but we never know what could really happen here. Maybe Russia might get desperate and try to go after the Baltic nations or something like that. So yeah, apparently GPS signals are being blocked even further over Kaliningrad and in that area of the Baltic Sea. Now from Ukrainian Review, we should be realistic about those who brought war to Europe. Russia cannot be persuaded to peace by persuasion, but there are forms of pressure that can harm those who are behind this, says Zelensky. I ask you to support a serious strengthening of sanctions against Russia. Our goal should be a significant reduction in oil revenues and Russia's financial capabilities. If Russian oil is sold for no more than $30 per barrel, then Moscow will suddenly sound peaceful, and we must close all the loopholes that make it possible to finance the Russian federal budget. Political isolation is when everyone clearly follows the rules and the rules that not only Europe but also the global south, China, Brazil, India, etc. do not engage in economic relations with Russia, do not balance between us and Russia, but force Russia to ceasefire, at least take the first step towards ending the war. These are important things. I don't see such pressure from these countries yet. Their involvement in the peace process and pressure from them on Russia, as Zelensky says. Yeah, so you would think if there's a lot of countries that want this war to end, they should all come together collectively and force Russia to end this war. Russia attacked Ukraine, so all the pressure's got to be put on Russia to end it. And considering that Russia's lost a million troops, taken a million casualties, that is, in this fight against Ukraine, that by now we'd have a lot of countries standing together with Ukraine and fighting back against Russia and putting economic damage onto Russia, maybe not buying their oil anymore or whatnot. But clearly so many countries are just so heavily reliant on Russian oil that they probably won't do that. So Zelensky's calling on all these nations to put pressure on Russia, and at the same time, let's get that $30 per barrel deal done with the EU, as the EU is trying to lower it to $45 per barrel, down from $60 with that price cap on Russian oil. But Zelensky's still calling for 30. Now for Noel reports, Zelensky tells Politico Russia simply lying to Trump. Most world leaders see it. I hope America does too. He warns a Russian victory in Kremlin fiction. Putin only understands strength, and U.S. withdrawal would be the Kremlin's dream. Here's a report today. Zelensky, Russia is simply lying to Trump. It's all in his hands, the Ukrainian president said, referring to his American counterpart. Yeah, so Zelensky coming out saying that Russia's just lying to Trump, that, they're claiming that they want to end this war, but they really don't. I mean, actions speak louder than words, and many people understand that. If the Russians are not ending this war, if they're not committing to a 30-day ceasefire with Ukraine, that clearly shows they want to expand this war and they want to take over more territory in Ukraine, maybe even try to defeat Ukraine altogether. And I'm sure that's the number one goal at the end of the day. And, considering that Russia's expanding their offensive, they're now attacking the Sumy region. I mean, there's all these signs clearly showing that Russia is not ready to end it. And if Trump, is able to see that, then he should be doing something. But clearly, Trump either does not see what's going on. And if that's not the case, he's choosing to not see it. And he's giving Vladimir Putin more time to carry on this invasion. There's really only a few options there, right? Or explanations. Now for Bliskovka, Ukraine has the potential to produce $30 billion worth of weapons, but is currently utilized only about 60% of its capacity due to lack of funding, says Zelensky. So apparently funding is still a big issue inside of Ukraine. They need more money to produce what they could be doing is $30 billion worth of weapons, but apparently they're only doing about 60% of capacity because they're lacking funding right now. So that's not good news. Maybe they could be producing a lot more weapons, but they just don't have the money right now. But we've been seeing a lot of aid packages coming from Europe, but I feel like lately we haven't been seeing nearly as many. I mean, even just the reports I've been giving you guys, we used to hear just like 6 months ago, there was like new aid packages every single week, and now they're starting to really taper off. We're not seeing as much anymore, and I thought that was interesting. Now from Ukrainian Review, Tu-95s must be in the air for 23 hours to carry out missile strikes on Ukraine. They must fly 12,400 kilometers, according to tracking data. As a result of the Special Operation Spiderweb at the air bases Olenia, Belaya, Russia began to use new airfields to deploy its aircraft. Yeah, so apparently they've had to move a lot of their aircraft further away from Ukraine. They've been stationing them way over here in the Far East. We've been hearing about that. Some Tu-160s got moved way deep out here. So in order for them to launch strikes over on Ukraine, they got to be flying for 23 hours, there and back, I'm assuming, just to launch any kind of a strike. So Ukraine definitely making it very difficult for the Russians to carry out missile attacks using their aviation warplanes here, right? So like their strategic bombers and whatnot. So clearly that Operation Spiderweb was very effective at deterring Russia from future attacks on Ukraine. Now from Max 25, NATO is expanding its satellite surveillance capacities to scan large swaths of land, enabling the alliance to monitor military movements of Ukraine, or in Ukraine, and on the Russia's borders with its eastern members, Top Commander Pierre Vandier said. According to Bloomberg, here's a report today. NATO gets new tools to monitor Ukraine in the eastern flank. Now, this is interesting. So NATO expanding their satellite surveillance capacities. Okay, so they're going to be able to scan large pieces of land on the eastern front. So probably like the Baltic nations, maybe Finland, Poland as well, I would assume, because Poland's right on the border there with like Belarus and Ukraine. and they're going to be able to monitor Russian movements over there more carefully. Just in case we happen to see any kind of an attack or anything, they'll be able to get some information beforehand before Russia decides to launch any kind of attack on NATO. So that's some good deterrence there from NATO. Now from Anton Gerashenko, at least 50 U.S. and EU representatives left the forum in Uzbekistan during a speech by Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak, the Uzbek Service of Radio Liberty reported. After the Tashkent International Investment Forum opening ceremony, the plenary session was to be moderated by CNN business editor at large and journalist Richard Quest, but according to sources, he refused to do so, probably because of the participation of a Russian official. As soon as he took the floor, political and business representatives from the U.S. and most European Union countries left the hall in protest. I personally saw representatives from the U.S., UK, Poland, Latvia, and Lithuania walk out. At least 50 participants protested against the Russian officials' participation in the forum, an unnamed European diplomat told Radio Liberty. He also called this decision a political démarche. According to him, Novak began his speech with greetings from Putin. So here was a picture of him today at this conference. And yeah, apparently right when this Deputy Prime Minister out of Russia, Alexander Novak, started speaking, a lot of members of this conference started walking out. Okay, multiple nations. They talked about US, UK, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, started walking out immediately in protest of this man speaking, obviously because of the war in Ukraine and whatnot. So clearly, still a lot of officials from different nations around the world are not happy with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Now, for more translated, Defense Express reports that Russia has attacked Ukraine with a new jet-powered UAV of Russian production, the Garan 3. Its speed is 550 to 600 kilometers per hour, while regular Shahed drones have a speed of only up to 200 kilometers per hour. Okay, so it looks like a new jet-powered Garan 3 drone. Okay, these are based on the Shahed drones that come from Iran. So these are remanufactured as Russian drones, okay, but they're based on the original design of Shaheds, and apparently they've got some new jet-powered drones now as well, and here's a picture of one of those. So not good news, guys. 550 to 600 kilometers per hour max speed compared to the original 200 miles per hour with the original, propeller-driven drones, okay? So not good news. So these are going to be causing more damage inside of Ukraine, going to be more hard to be shot down as well because they fly so much faster. So that is very, very bad to hear that. Now, from NOAA reports, last night Ukraine was attacked by 63 drones, Shahed and imitators, from multiple directions. Air Defense Forces shot down 49 of them across eastern, southern, and northern regions. 28 were destroyed by fire, 21 neutralized by electronic warfare. Okay, so a good majority, 49 out of the 63, were shot down or suppressed by EW or electronic warfare. So not that many drones going into Ukraine last night, but otherwise we did have some damage being reported in Kharkiv, people being injured, possibly even killed, as I reported to you guys earlier. Now our final update of the day from the Kyiv Independent. These are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of June 12th, according to the Armed Forces of Ukraine. In our final update of the day, Russia's losses as of June 12th, 1,140 troops, 3 AFVs, 136 vehicles and fuel tanks, 8 tanks, 47 artillery systems, 138 UAVs, 2 planes, and 1 anti-aircraft warfare system. So I'm noticing we're still seeing this plane number at 2 for like the last 3 days now. I'm not sure why they haven't updated that yet. As far as I know, there hasn't been any other planes being shot down, unless there's some reports that I'm not hearing about, but like I stated, I haven't really heard anything about that. But aside from that, guys, yeah, look at this, 1,340,000 troops now. So officially crossing the 1 million point, or exceeding the 1 million casualty number here. So that's just crazy that Russia's lost over 1 million troops here taking casualties in this fight against Ukraine. And that number is only expected to grow, guys. I want to thank you very much for being here for this update today on June 12th, 2025 on Thursday. And I hope you guys all have an awesome day today. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday and getting into this weekend. I hope you guys have a good weekend as well. I'll have more updates for you today coming out from the Middle East, maybe from Ukraine if we get some more updates as well. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in for this update. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. And with that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.